Welcome to Fantasia, home of the melodious. My name's Azallea, and today, gonna be bringing you guys my Dinomist deck profile. Now, I wasn't expecting or planning to do one of these, but enough of you guys have requested it after seeing my Dinomist duel video that I posted probably like last week. So yeah, I decided why not, let's update this Dinomist deck for the June 2017 ban list. So yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump right into this. So starting off, we're playing 3 copies of Dinomist Terran. Now, Terran is a searcher for the deck. It's an 1800 attack beat stick, which is really nice for its effect, where if Terran destroys a monster by battle, you can actually add 1 Dinomist card from your deck to your hand. So this searches the monsters, spells, and traps, which is really nice. Now, of course, your main target's going to be something like Dinomist Charge or the new card Dinomist Howling, but we'll get into that in just a bit. So the next card that we play is 3 copies of Dinomist Plesiosaur. Now, Plesiosaur has a really neat effect where all face-up monsters that your opponent controls will lose 100 attack for every face-up Dinomist card that you control. So not only for the face-up monsters, but your face-up Pendulum Scales, your face-up Spell and Trap cards, everything. For every card that you control, that's a Dinomist card, your opponent's monster will lose 100 attack. So if you have multiple Plesioses on the field, your opponent's monsters will be very, very small and really easy to run over. Which is great because Dinomist is a very battle-oriented deck, if you can't already tell. Okay, so the next card that we play, we're going to play 1 copy of Dinomist Stegosaur. Now, Stegosaur has a really niche effect, but it's also pretty good and comes in handy at times. It says that if another pendulum monster you control battles an opponent's monster, after damage calculation, you can destroy both of those monsters, which is kind of nice, because if your monster is going to die anyway, you might as well destroy your opponent's monster along with it. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with itself, but of course, you can crash your Dinomist into something that you want to get rid of, and then activate Stegosaur's effect, which is pretty cool. The next card that we play, 1 copy of Dinomist Ankylos. Ankylos has a pretty neat effect as well, where you banish any monster destroyed by battle with a Dinomist monster that you control. And this is really good because there's a lot of decks right now, like Zodiacs and such, where they have low attack and low defense monsters, and if you destroy them, you can actually banish them. So this is kind of like a whiptail sort of effect. And the cool thing about Ankylos is that it actually applies to itself too. So if Ankylos runs over something, you can also banish that as well. But yeah. So moving on, we're going into the larger Dinomist monsters, the level 5 monsters. We're playing, starting off, 2 copies of Dinomist Rex. Now, this is my favorite card in the deck, and the reason why I really actually picked it up. So Dinomist Rex has 2 awesome effects. So if this card attacks, at the end of the damage step, you contribute 1 other Dinomist monster and then activate 1 of these effects. This card can make a second attack on an opponent's monster in a row, and if it attacks a defense position monster, you inflict piercing damage to your opponent. And the second effect is the one I love the most, where you get to shuffle 1 card for your opponent's hand at random or their side of the field, your choice, and then this card gains 100 attack. So Dinomist Rex is basically like an Ignister, but you just have to conduct your battle phase and then tribute another Dinomist card to get the effect off. So it's just really, really nice to be able to shuffle cards from your opponent's hand back, or shuffle problematic monsters that you couldn't attack over just right back into the deck. Maybe something that had higher attack. Maybe you wanted to get rid of some back row or their field spell or something like that that you don't have the proper removal for at the time. So Dinomist Rex is very, very good. And also, because it's a level 5 and all Dinomists are machines, you can obviously overlay into cards like Nova and then into Infinity. Okay, so the last Dinomist card that we actually play in this deck, we play 2 copies of Dinomist Spinos. Now, Spinos is pretty awesome because it also has 2 really cool effects. It says that you contribute 1 other Dinomist monster and then activate 1 of these effects. This card can attack your opponent directly this turn, and this card can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn. So the thing is, you can actually use this effect more than once. So if you tribute 2 Dinomist monsters, this card can attack your opponent directly, and it can attack your opponent twice this battle phase. So because it has 2500 attack, you could very easily just poke your opponent for 5000 damage. Very similar to how Lyrical Lucinius function, but of course in the form of a giant beat stick. Instead of poking your opponent multiple times for like 1000 each, you're going to poke your opponent twice for 2500 each. So Spinos, very, very dangerous card for your opponent, and they're probably going to try to get rid of it as soon as possible, because you can keep recycling every time just summoning it from your extra deck. They want to get rid of it, or else you're just going to finish the game off by poking them for 25 to the face. But yeah, moving on, we're going to go into some of the hand traps. We're playing one copy of Maxi because you want to get those draws. You want to draw into your pendulum monsters over here that you can keep reusing. We have a relatively low monster count, but we're not actually playing a demise variant of this deck because I'm not a huge fan of how it plays. But anyway. Yeah, one Maxi for the draws. You want to draw into as many cards as possible to, of course, generate advantage, but while also discouraging your opponent from going off, right? So the next card that we play is another hand trap, 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Really do love this card because it's a level 3 tuner, so it goes really well to make level 7 and level 8 synchros in this deck, because if you have level 4 and level 5 pendulum monsters that can keep coming back. So yeah, that's why I play 3 copies, because if you do draw into another copy, you can always summon it and then go for synchro plays. But yeah, if not, you can always keep it in your hand as a hand trap. It's just very versatile as a card, and I really do like that. So yeah, that does it for the monsters. Next up, we're going to go into the spell cards. Okay, so for the spell cards, starting off, we're playing 3 copies of Dinomist Charge, and I absolutely love this card because it's very similar to how Tenki functions. So when you activate this card, you can actually add 1 Dinomist monster from your deck to your hand, so it searches, but it also has another effect where if a Dinomist monster on your side of the field is sent to your extra deck face up, you can actually add 1 of those Dinomist monsters back to your hand. Unfortunately, you can only activate 1 of these per turn, but you still want to play 3 because you want to see as soon as possible. It's basically like playing 3 extra copies of a monster. Now, normally you can search this out with Terran. This card is so good for just recurring monsters back to your hand, which is why Dinomists are going to be one of those very resilient pendulum decks, even when links come out. Because I know a lot of people are going to be asking, oh, what are you going to do for links? Yeah, so Dinomists are very good because of Charge, because it adds back to your hand. So you can actually pendulum summon from your hand instead of your extra deck, so you don't need to have extra, or you don't have to have additional extra monster zones on your side of the field to be able to play your deck. Okay, so the next Dinomist card that we play, unfortunately, is not searchable, but we have 2 copies of Dynamic Power Load. Now, I really like Power Load right now because of decks like Zodiacs, where they have access to Whiptail and things like that. This bypasses it, and this also bypasses a lot of back row, like the Mirror Forces and things like that, which are still relatively popular. Essentially, it gives all of your Dynamist monsters 300 attack and defense, and if a Dynamist monster you control battles, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. So this is very, very good. It's very similar to how Meteor Burst functions, except this your opponent can't activate monster, spell, or trap effects when you attack. So yeah, you're pretty much guaranteed to get like Terran searches or to get Dynamis Rex's effects off and everything like that. So it's really, really good. Okay, so next off, we're playing 1 copy of Limiter Removal. This card is so good in Dinomist because it allows you to double the attack of all machine-type monsters that you control, at both the activation and the resolution of this card until the end of this turn. And during the end phase, you destroy all those monsters, but that normally doesn't matter because you're either using this to OTK, of course, by just doubling everything on your side of the field, or you can actually use this on your opponent's turn. When they're attacking to your monsters, you can activate your Limiter Removal. Your monsters will get huge, and if your opponent's like attacking to something like a Terran, you destroy their monster, you actually get searches. And then during the end phase, of course, it doesn't really matter if they get destroyed because you can pendulum summon all your monsters back. So Limiter Removal is just so good in this deck. Really nice tech. And the last spell card that we play in this deck, 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon, just for the additional spell and trap removal. I really do like this because you can hit those cards like Solemn Warning and Solemn Strike that Pendulum decks just loathe. But yeah, anyway, that does it for these spell cards. We don't play a lot of those because we play a lot of traps, which we're going to get into in just a bit. Okay, so for the trap cards, starting off, we're playing 2 copies of Dinomist Rush. Now, Dinomist Rush is basically like another copy of a Dinomist monster in your deck because you can just special summon one of them straight from your deck onto your side of the field. Now, whatever monster that you special summon with this effect is actually going to be unaffected by all other card effects. Unfortunately, though, it does get destroyed during the end phase, but that's fine because Charge can still add it back to your hand. Now, Rush has several good versatile uses. On your opponent's turn, you can actually summon out a Plesios, decreasing your opponent's monster's attack points so they can't attack over some of your more important monsters. Another cool thing is that you can summon out a Stegosaur and protect your other Pendulum monsters, or at least deter your opponent from attacking your other Pendulum monsters in fear of them losing their monsters to Stegosaur's effect. And on your turn, if this card survives until your turn, you can actually summon things like Rex or Spinos or even a Terran to attack into your opponent for a bunch of damage, activate their effects if you want to, and get some searches with Terran without any worry about their back row, their monster effects, and everything like that. So yeah, Dinomist Rush is a very versatile card. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention when I was going over the monsters is that a lot of the Dinomists, or every Dinomist, have a scale effect, but they have really good protection effects in them. So the low scales, the scale 3s, they have the effect where if any other Dinomist card would be destroyed by a card effect, you can actually destroy just that card instead. And these scale 6s, the high scales, you can actually negate the activated effect of a card that targets any of your Dinomist cards, and then you can just destroy your scale 6 instead. So that's really cool. The reason why I bring this up is because the new card, which is Dinomist Howling, we actually play 3 copies of these. Dinomist Howling is really great because when you activate this card, you can actually place 1 or 2 Dinomist Pendulum monsters from your deck into your Pendulum zones, but you cannot Pendulum summon monsters until the end of your next turn, except Dinomist monsters. And the cool thing is that with this card, once per turn, if this card is already face up on your side of the field, you can actually tribute 1 Dinomist monster, target 1 card that your opponent controls, and return it to the hand. Now, the reason why I brought up the protection effects is that if any of your Dinomist cards, including Rush or Howling or even your Charge, if your opponent tries like Twin Twistering or destroying them, if you flip up something like Dinomist Rush, if one of the cards that's targeted by the Twin Twisters is your Rush, you flip up the Rush, and then that means at that point the Twin Twisters is trying to destroy the Rush, so you can actually protect the other target from getting destroyed by Twin Twisters by negating Twin Twisters with your scale 6. Same thing with Howling. If your opponent tries to destroy your Howling, you can flip the Howling, place 2 Pendulum Scales from your deck, and you can either negate the destruction with your scale 3, or you can negate the effect that targets with your scale 6. So this is a really nice way of just protecting all of your face-up spell and trap cards, because Dinomists actually play a lot of those, and yeah, and then of course your scales you can recycle with your Charge, add it back to your hand, activate it next turn, and then go for your pendulum summons. But anyway, because Howling actually requires empty spaces for you to be able to place your scales into your pendulum zones, I like to go for this sick little tech that I just love in this deck, 1 copy of Echo Oscillation. Now, Echo Oscillation says that you could target 1 card in your pendulum zone and destroy it, then draw 1 card. But you can only use this effect of Echo Oscillation once per turn, which is why I only play 1 copy. If you draw into multiples, they're all dead and it just sucks. But Echo Oscillation, though, is super nice for just clearing your scales and getting additional draws. But the cool thing is that you can actually, just during your opponent's turn, destroy a scale, get a draw. On your turn, destroy a scale, get a draw. You just get so much additional resources with the Echo Oscillation. You're going to add whatever you're destroying back to your hand with your Dinomist Charge. It's so much synergy, and I absolutely love it. But anyway, moving on, we're actually playing 3 copies of Quaking Mirror Force, because people are going to be very tempted to just attack to your Dinomist, because you could protect them from destruction, and you could protect them from targeting effects. So Quaking Mirror Force is actually great. If your opponent does overcommit to the field and try to attack you, flip everything face down, and then you just, shuffle everything back with Dinomist Rex. You can attack into multiple things with Spinos. You can get searches with Terran. It's just such a great card, and I absolutely love it. Another card that actually is really good is going to be 3 copies of Lost Wind. Now, Lost Wind, the cool thing about it is that it actually halves the original attack of your opponent's monster. So when your opponent has a special summon monster and they're trying to attack into you with it, you can actually use Lost Wind during the damage step, have their attack, and then your Dinomist wins that battle, which is really, really good, because Dinomist, of course, main form of removal is going to be through battle. Now, Lost Wind's also great because it permanently negates the monster's effects while they're face up on the field, so that's always nice. Even if you're not trying to go for the damage step shenanigans, you can always just negate their effects, and then their monster's going to be low enough that you can probably attack over it even with your weakest Dinomist monsters. Okay, and to cap off the trap cards, we're actually playing 3 copies of Solemn Strike, which I obviously don't have. I have these proxies, but Solemn Strike is just really great for getting extra negations for monster effects. You can negate hand traps and things like that too, which is really good. Basically fills the gap that Lost Wind can't cover. And of course, last but not least, we play 1 copy of Solemn Warning, additional negation. So I play a lot of trap cards, but these 5 up here, the Dinomist ones, are really just utility cards, which is really great. So yeah, that's it for the main deck. Next off, we're going to go into the side deck. Okay, so for the side deck, starting off, we're playing 3 copies of Flying Sea. Now, Flying Sea is basically like a dimensional barrier on your opponent's turn. So if they're going first and you know they're playing a deck that likes the XYZ a lot, maybe they're playing something like Zodiacs, you can just drop that Flying Sea onto them. If they don't have something like a Barrage or a Chalice, they basically can't out it and they're basically stuck for the rest of the turn. So that's really nice to prevent them from setting up. Next off, we're actually playing our 3rd copy of Mystical Space Typhoon, because a lot of people are going to be siding things like Imperial Order or Anti-Spell Fragrance against you. You just want that additional consistency into drawing your spell and trap removal to be able to destroy those cards so you can continue playing. Next off, we're playing 1 copy of Raigeki for the board wipes in case you need it. And we're actually playing 2 copies of Dark Hole because additional field wipes are really welcome in this deck, especially because it's a pendulum deck, and you can always pendulum back all the monsters that got destroyed, or you can actually protect your Dinomist monsters by destroying your low-scale Dinomist, the scale 3s, inside your pendulum scales. So there's always that as well. Next off, for some of the trap cards, we're playing 3 copies of Starlight Road. Now, I really do like Starlight Road in this deck because your opponent's going to be trying to very, very aggressively destroy your back row. They do not want the Howlings on the field. They do not want you to have all of your Quakings, your Strikes, your Lost Winds, and everything like that. Definitely going to be siding in removal against you, and the easiest way to protect your stuff without using your scales is going to be your Starlight Road, because it also puts a 2500 attack body in the form of Stardust Dragon onto your side of the field. Just super, super good in this deck. So the next card that we play, and I absolutely love this card as a tech, we actually play 3 copies of Spiritual Water Art Aoi. So Spiritual Water Art allows you to tribute 1 water monster, look at your opponent's hand, and send 1 card from their hand to the graveyard. Now this is such good disruption, and it just gives you so much information about your opponent's hand that you can actually plan out what you're going to negate, what you're going to do against them with whatever back row that you have at the moment. It's just super powerful card, and you can easily pendulum summon the monster that you tributed back next turn, or if you had charge up on the field, you get to actually add that monster back to your hand, which is, of course, really nice. Now, the last 2 cards that I play in the side deck are going to be this card that I don't know how to pronounce, Eishiban. But anyway, this card is absolutely amazing, and I don't think a lot of people know about this. If you're familiar with Lose 1 Turn, it's actually very, very similar to that. So when a monster with an attribute other than a water is normal summoned or special summoned, including face-down summons, and you control a face-up water monster, then that summoned monster is changed to defense position. So very much like Lose 1 Turn, where it changes the opponent's monster defense position and negates their effects if they're special summoned, this actually changes the opponent's monster to defense position even if it's normal summoned. So normal or special summoned, everything gets put into defense position. Basically just adds an additional layer of protection for your Dinomist cards on your side of the field where your opponent can't run over anything. So yeah, I really do like this card. 2 copies is enough. You don't want to see it that frequently because, of course, if you have multiples, it's going to suck. So 2 is the right amount to play, in my opinion. Very much like Lose 1 Turn. Right, but yeah, anyway, that does it for the side deck. Next off, we're going to go into the extra deck. Okay, so for the extra deck, starting off, we're actually playing 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, because of course, Abyss Dweller is a very good card for shutting down your opponent's graveyard, and if you use a water monster as a material, Abyss Dweller gives all water monsters that you control 500 attack, which is really nice because Dinomists are all water monsters. So you can actually boost your monsters with the Abyss Dweller as well as shut down their graveyard effects at the same time. So that's very nice. Next off, we're playing 1 copy of Castel, the Sky Blaster Musketeer. Castel is just really good removal. Of course, if you have Dinomist Rex in circulation, you're probably not going to go for this. This is just some utility in case you don't have Rex and you have additional level 4s that you can sacrifice for the overlay. The next card that we play is one copy of Tornado Dragon. This card actually comes up a lot in my duels when I've been playtesting with this, and Tornado Dragon just allows us to destroy spell and trap cards during either player's turn. So this card is just really good. Normally, if I have additional Dinomist monsters, I like to go for the Tornado Dragon, and the Tornado Dragon allows me to shut down my opponent's plays, because normally I have enough things to deal with monsters in my deck, but Tornado Dragon adds that way to deal with spell and trap cards. Okay, so next off we're playing one copy of number 103, Ragna Zero. Now, the reason why I play Ragna Zero is because of her effect, of course, where it says once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach one XYZ material from this card, then target one face of attack position monster your opponent controls, whose attack is different from its original attack, destroy it, and if you do, draw one card. So not only is this removal, but the reason why I play this is because of its synergy with Plesio's. Plesio's decreases your opponent's monster's attack by 100 for every Dinomist monster you control, including itself. So Plesio's, if it's just on the field by itself, your opponent's monster loses 100 attack. Then if you have a Ragna Zero, you can destroy your opponent's monster, and then you can get a free draw. So Ragna Zero is absolutely amazing, and it can actually lock down your opponent. Of course, if your opponent's normal summoning something on their turn, that's very essential to their play. Just pop it right then and there with the Ragna Zero. If you have your Plesios on the field, it's just really, really good interaction and synergy with the deck. Okay, the next card that we play is actually going to be number 37, Hope Woven Dragon Spider Shark. Just what a name, right? But its effect is actually pretty good. When a player's monster declares an attack, you get to detach one XYZ material from this card, and all monsters your opponent currently controls loses 8,000 attack until the end of the turn. And also, when this card is destroyed by battle or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can actually target one other monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So this card is so good for bringing things back from your graveyard that you might have previously used as XYZ material, or this card is just going to be running over a ton of things. The awesome thing about it is you don't even have to use its effect. It has 2,600 attack, and because 2,500 is a very common base attack stat for a lot of boss monsters in the game, 2,600 allows you to run over those types of monsters without needing additional effects or anything. So that's always really good. But again, also, because this allows you to decrease attacks, very good synergy with things like Ragna Zero, and decreasing your opponent's attacks with this card also allows your smaller Dinomist monsters to run over your opponent's stuff. Okay, so next off, I'm going to go into some of the rank 5s. We play one copy of number 61, Volcasaurus, just to inflict some extra burn damage, and as extra removal, you destroy your opponent's monster, and if you do inflict damage to their life points equal to this original attack. So that's kind of nice as removal and as burn damage. It could even finish the game off, potentially. And now we're going to go into a lot of these cards that like to stack on each other. So starting off, we have one copy of Utopia, and on top of Utopia, we like to stack, of course, the Utopia the Lightning for additional damage to run over things. Again, really good synergy with cards like your Hope Woven Dragon Spider Shark, or your Plesios, where it decreases your opponent's attack points, so that Utopia Lightning can do additional damage, a lot of damage to your opponent in one swing. The next card that we play is number 94, Crystal Zero. Requires 2 level 5 water monsters, and during either player's turn, you can detach one XYZ material from this card, then target one face-up monster on the field, and its attack becomes half its current attack until the end of your turn. So the cool thing about this is not only can your Dinomist monsters run over whatever this has, but you can also use it during either player's turn. Doesn't really come up too often because you're normally going to be overlaying this onto it, the full armored Crystal Zero Lancer. Now this card is absolutely phenomenal. We finally got into TCG, and I'm so happy because I really love this card. It has really cool artwork too. So if you don't know what it does, you can XYZ summon this card with a with a rank 5 water XYZ monster, which is going to be your Crystal Zero. And if this card be destroyed by a card effect or by battle, you can actually detach one XYZ material from this card instead. And also, once per turn, you can detach one XYZ material from this card, and all face-up monster your opponent controls have their effects negated until the end of this turn. And so this card is just absolutely phenomenal. And it also gains additional attack, of course, for each XYZ material attached to it. But the fact that you can just blanket negate to a lot of your opponent's stuff, it's very similar to like Brotherhood the Firefist Tiger King. It just allows you to much more easily get over their field. And of course, to top off the XYZs, we're playing one copy of Cyber Dragon Nova because we can overlay our level 5 machine type monsters, and then overlay on top of that a Cyber Dragon Infinity, which will allow us to negate very important card effects as well as be like a pseudo 101 where you can absorb your opponent's monsters, right? Cyber Dragon Infinity is such a good card, and I really love it in this deck. It's not smart to summon this out just by itself, but because we play so much back row, it's so protected that it's actually worth it. Okay, so that's it for all of the XYZs. Next off, gonna go into the Synchros. So for the Synchros, starting off, we're playing one copy of Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. I like this card because of both of its effects kind of come into play when you're dueling. So the first effect is that when this card is special summoned, you can target one card in your Pendulum Zone, and you can actually special summon it. So you can summon your Dinomist Rex or whatever else you need. It's kind of like a nice utility, especially because Howling gets to place whatever we want from our deck straight onto our Pendulum Zones. This card is pretty good to just bring whatever we want out. Of course, this card cannot attack during the turn it uses this effect, but it also has a really nice other effect that just is continuous while it's face up on the field. It's that if you enter your battle phase, your opponent cannot activate their monster effects during the battle phase. So this just locks down so many different things, and it's really nice. Kind of like a mini power load if you don't have access to power load and your opponent has something like a whiptail attached to their monsters and stuff. Just Meteor Burst is a pretty good to go into. Of course, you synchro with it using the Ghost Ogre and any level 4 Dinomist monster that you have. The next card that we play is one copy of Stardust Dragon. You can make this with a Ghost Ogre and any level 5 Dinomist monster that you have, but you can also bring this out with the Starlight Road that we side. That's why I did it, because it just has a double use or an easier way to summon if you don't have access to the other, right? Stardust Dragon just allows you to provide additional protection for your scales, for your back row, and all that good stuff. Okay, so for the last card that we're playing, the infamous Ignister Prominence, the Blasting Draco Slayer. Such an amazing card that actually had to get limited. So if you're not familiar with what this does, you can destroy one Pendulum monster on the field or in the Pendulum Zone. It doesn't have to be your own, so if you're playing against an opponent's Pendulum deck, you can actually destroy their stuff as well, and then you can shuffle one card back into the deck. So just non-targeting, non-destruction removal, so good. Basically like a Dinomist Rex, but you don't actually have to attack, and you don't have to tribute anything of your own to actually use its effect. Technically, if you're not up against a Pendulum deck, then yes, you would have to, but you can blow up your scales, add whatever you destroyed back with charge, so it's not too much of a worry, right? But yeah, that caps off all the monsters in the extra deck, and that does it for the deck profile. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please leave a like, subscribe for more Dinomist content, and leave a comment down below letting me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.